Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all today. As most of you know, we will be reflecting on the story of Cain and Abel from Genesis chapter 4. Excellent. Thank you for paying attention. We will cover the stories, a little bit of the genealogy and things. If you're reading along at home or wherever, please just keep reading through the stories. Get all the parts, kind of the bridge parts, and we'll focus on some of those major stories here. We'll begin with Rabbi Bisno offering the same prayer that we did last week. We'll just say, as one reminded me, we've not forgotten about what happened in Ukraine, in Russia. Just like there's Israel and Hamas fighting going on, just like there was an earthquake in Afghanistan or a coup in Niger and loads of things. And I'll just, rather than respond to every single incident, is to remember to be grounded in Christ, is how we would say it. What would you say? Probably not that.
And hope. No, we wouldn't say that. Hope, grounded in hope.
Grounded in hope. So all these things are important. They absolutely are. But to continue to seek the kingdom of God is one way to say it, and continue to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. So this prayer, while it's specific to the Jewish community, really stands for all people everywhere. Rabbi.
Good morning. May it be your will, Holy One, our God and our ancestors' God, that you erase war and bloodshed from the world, and in its place draw down a great and glorious peace, so that nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore. Rather, may all the inhabitants of the earth recognize and deeply know this great truth, that we have not come into this world for strife and division, nor for hatred and rage, nor provocation and bloodshed. Rather, have we come here only to encounter you, eternally blessed one. And so we ask your compassion upon us and the world. Raise up by us what is written. I shall place peace upon the earth, and you shall lie down safe and undisturbed. I shall banish evil beasts from the earth, and the sword shall not pass through your land. But rather let justice come in waves like water, and righteousness flow like a river. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Holy One, and as the waters cover the sea. So may it be, and we say together, Amen.
Amen. Rabbi, where's that prayer come from?
This prayer comes from the Rabbinical Assembly, which is the conservative movement's rabbinical union, but it draws passages from Isaiah, let's see what you have here, from Leviticus, so that's why it's echoes.
Yeah. Very good. There's an old idea within Anglicanism, Episcopal Church, that the prayer book is praying the Bible. And so what we just heard was effectively praying different scriptures as well. This Cain and Abel story, I would say, is one of the truest stories of the Bible, in that it happens over and over again in different ways. And just a few things for us postmoderns to think about is when it talks about brother killing brother, sister and sister, sister and brother, friend to friend, colleague to colleague, all those things are operative. And it operates at a very archetypal or mythological level there. And if you notice, it's only 16 verses. There's a lot of stuff in these 16 verses. How many of you read Steinbeck's East of Eden? This is, that book is effectively a long meditation on this particular story, chapter 4, verses 1 through 16 on Cain and Abel. And I want to begin our reflection by a quote from Steinbeck, East of Eden. Now, it's missing a little context, but you'll get the gist of it. There was only one place that bothered me. The King James Version says this: it is when Jehovah has asked Cain why he is angry. Jehovah says, if thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Before I continue, I would suggest that's the key to understanding the whole story. and in fact, all of human nature as a human being. It was the "thou shalt" that struck me, because it was a promise that Cain would conquer sin. Then I got a copy of that American Standard Bible. It was very new then. And it was different in this passage. It says, "Do thou rule over him." Now this is very different. That is not a promise, but an order. And I began to stew about it. I wondered what the original word of the original writer had been. It is easy out of laziness, out of weakness, to throw oneself into the lap of the deity, saying, "I couldn't help it. The way was set. God, it's not my fault." But think of the glory of the choice. That makes a man a man. A cat has no choice. A bee must make honey. There's no godliness there. And do you know these old gentlemen who were sliding gently down to death are too interested to die now? These old men believe a story, and they know a true story when they hear it. They are critics of truth. They know that these 16 verses are a history of mankind in any age or culture or race. They do not believe a man writes 15 3/4 verses of truth and tells a lie with one verb. This is a ladder to climb to the stars. You can never lose that. It cuts the feet from under weakness and cowardliness and laziness. I feel that I am a man. I feel that a man is a very important thing, maybe more important than a star. This is not theology. I have no bent towards God's, but I have a new love for that glittering instrument, the human soul. It is a lovely and unique thing in the universe. It is always attacked and never destroyed because thou mayest. That's pretty good. So, how do you respond? What do you think of when you first hear this story of Cain and Abel?
I thought of Jacob and Esau.
Jacob and Esau.
Another pair of brothers.
How about Jacob and Esau, a pair of brothers? How about Joseph and his brothers, sell them into slavery? Who's the older brother of these two, Cain and Abel? Cain. It is often the case, there's an idea in that culture, in many cultures, what's the fancy name, primogeniture? The older brother inherits all the family stuff. Well, why is that? Because, say, if Aaron and I are brothers, mom and dad die, and we split it, and then we have kids, and they split it, you got very little left by the end. So the older brother gets everything, and the younger brother has to, go into the clergy, or become a soldier, or which is what happened, by the way, back in the day. You got to do something else, but from a very early age, you're not getting the family farm, you're not getting the family business. You got to go out. And it kept things intact. It kept a system working that way. And that was assumed to be the case. However, in the Scripture, in this very first story, the one we expect to get everything, have all the advantages, what we would now call privilege, doesn't get it. In fact, he's the one that's kind of the bad, well, not kind of, is the bad guy in the story and misses out. Andrea, where'd you go? Would you come up and read the story for us?
Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought the firstlings of his flock, their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain said to his brother Abel, Let us go out to the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is your brother Abel? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me. Then the Lord said to him, Not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
Thank you. When we talked about Adam and Eve in the garden, we discussed lots of wonderful things. And part of Adam and Eve eating the fruit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is they understood the difference between good and evil. They became self-conscious, self-aware that there is such a thing as good and bad, and then they were cast out of the garden. All true. I think one could make, at least to me, a compelling case that Cain and Abel are the first real human beings. As we mentioned last week, they're the first two to have belly buttons. Adam and Eve didn't have belly buttons. They were born. They had a mom and dad. They grew up, and they probably fought with one another. Don't go over the line. That's what brothers do. And they experienced hardship and pain. Adam and Eve didn't have that when they started out. They were in the garden with paradise. Cain and Abel never knew what that was like. They had to work for a living. So in very much, they are like us. And that becomes very important to think of just really quickly into the story about, did they know good and evil? Well, that's what the previous story said. There was some type of an awareness of all of that. Now, I don't mean to offend anybody, but it starts out with a sexual act right at the beginning. Adam, the man, Adam, knew his wife Eve. The New International Version translates it as Adam made love to his wife Eve. Maybe that's what happens, but what we do know is that Adam and Eve had a son named Cain. What does the name Eve mean, Aaron?
Life.
Life. And what does the name Cain mean? My wife read all this stuff with me, so yes, to produce, to get. So I have produced a man is a play on his name, Cain. I have produced Cain. That's an Abel, Havel, is it Havel?
Yep.
Means what?
So interestingly,
the
name Abel, which is the English word for Hevel, Hevelim, is the opening verses from Ecclesiastes, where we say vanity of vanities, or a breath, a passing breath, right? Everything's fleeting, everything's ephemeral. That's the name that Abel carries.
So in typical American English names, I won't name the movie, but the guy's name was Butch. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a name. I love to tell my wife, my name is Jonathon. Yahweh Nathan, God gives God's gift to Natalie. Yeah, she's nodding in affirmation there. Does Aaron mean? What does Aaron mean?
It was Moses' brother, but
it means he's Moses' brother. Very important job. So their names signify, to a degree, some type of meaning in the story. Cain is producer, getter. Abel is puff of wind, a vapor, vanity of vanities. I produced a man with the help of the Lord. Well, think of what the theological freight that one sentence is carrying. Who helped Eve bear a son? Did she do it all on her own? Now, Adam helped a little bit, a while, 9 months before. But she views her role as cooperating partnership with God. I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. That's a very important way to think about everything from childbearing to work to home life and so on, that there's cooperation, harmony, relationship going on. There's partnership between people and God built into the system. That's operative all throughout there. Next, Eve bore Cain's brother Abel. Are Cain and Abel twins? Probably not. Suggested some places, probably not. Again, Cain is the older. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, a shepherd, and Cain a tiller of the ground, farmer. Who remembers earlier in the story of Genesis, who was given that job of a keeper of sheep and a tiller of the ground? To have dominion over the garden, all the animals and crops. That was Adam and Eve's job. And interestingly now, with the two sons, they're split. It's not a, this does only that. If you take care of sheep, you also got to eat fruit and vegetables and so on. But it's simply a division of that. So there's a sharing. The same job Adam and Eve had, the sons are now doing that. In the course of time, I love that phrase, in the course of time. So they're born, and here they grew up. We know nothing about their childhood. Let's assume, for the sake of discussion, that they're normal brothers. Who here has two sons? Tell us what it's like having two boys.
They're constantly at each other. Yeah?
They're constantly at each other. They're best friends.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're constantly bickering, wrestling,
Right.
trying to get mom and dad's attention.
Right.
Who's your favorite?
That's
Yes.
what they're asking. Yeah.
They're asking. I'm not the one who broke that. They're all there's competition. Just assume. So say yeah. Everything. Everything again I said about like two brothers, two sisters, a brother and a sister. There are variations, but it's the same thing. So they're born. We know what they do, and then they're grown up. We get to this story. Because to a degree, none of it matters other than they have a normal childhood, normal for back then. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel, for his part, brought of the firstlings of his flock their fat portions. Probably how we tend to think of, what is this called, an offering? What's a fancy word we use for what they're doing? They're offering what to God? A sacrifice. And so they're each offering what they've got. Now, it would be, there's an old tradition when the priest gets to the new church. This happened to me. They called it the pounding of the rector, which is not as bad as it sounds. They give you a pound of tobacco, a pound of sugar, whatever. I was brought a snow shovel because I didn't have one living in the South. I was given other things as a gift to welcome you into the community. And with that, it was a wonderful gift to receive, to feel included. But it was an offering, a gift, symbolic of many things. What they're doing is offering the best that they have, Cain and Abel there. And presumably, it's not, as one person said, Cain is not offering wilted lettuce to God. Let's just say he's offering the best he's got, whatever that is. And Abel, it's a little more descriptive. He's been the firstlings of his flocks, not the runts, and the fat, meaning the best. Does it say, is Cain's offering worse or the same or better than Abel's? Do any of you read that? I don't see it says in the story. Maybe it does later. John Calvin, beginning with him and others, started interpreting what their sacrifices meant. And then the next line. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. That is a devastating realization that has just happened. I drink some of your coffee. Thank you. He and I really like each other. Thank you. The Lord had regard for Abel's offering, but not Cain's. When have you experienced in your life your parents really loved what you did, but not what your sibling did? Or your boss preferred your coworker to you? Oh, that's never happened to you, has it? Or think of your friend, you have a group of friends, one of them prefers this to that, and you're left out. When you're the one left out, and again, there's no suggestion that Cain gave anything less than his best. Some have said, oh, his heart wasn't in it. Well, maybe, but we don't know that. Oh, he's just going through the motions. How do you know that? Maybe that's the best he's got. How do you feel if you've done your best and your stupid brother who always gets everything right, or your dumb sister, and oh, I can't stand her. I know I love her, she's my family and all that, but why is everything so easy for her? Why is everything, she gets good grades, and she's pretty, and she dresses well, and she's never looks bad, and whatever. Why is everything so easy for her? And so how does Cain respond to that? How do you respond? Upset? Crestfallen? That's beautiful. Cain was angry, and his countenance fell. Jealous. There you go. You're jealous. It's a very natural feeling, response, to be jealous. And so you're jealous, resentful. What did he do to deserve that? Nothing that I didn't do. What about me? And then you get into self-pity, and there's this cascade of feelings that can all happen. Oh, thank you. Wheezy has taken care of me for years and years. She worked at Calvary 50 years. She arrived as a 2-year-old also, of course, at Calvary Church. You're jealous, resentful, angry, bitter. If you let those things sit, they get worse over the time. But I want to go back for a second. What is it that Cain and Abel are doing in the sacrifice? Why did they offer a sacrifice to begin with? To praise God, to thank God, to please God. So if any of you are married or you have a good friend, I want you to go home today, and instead of cooking them a good meal, I would like you to sacrifice something that you love and burn it on the altar and say, here, this is for you, Natalie. This is for you, whomever. How in the world is that supposed to function? How does it please God if I presumably burn some barley or burn a sheep? How does that work? This, by the way, is the first time in the Bible that the idea of sacrifice occurs. It's quite operative, and you could make the case, I'm pretty sure, that all throughout Hebrew Bible, Jewish history, that the idea of sacrifice is there all the time. They made an offering to God. The temple has sacrifices to it, offerings of animals. And you could even say, what in the world are we doing, is happening rather, when God offers his son Jesus to be a sacrifice on the cross for the sins of the whole world? That same idea is carried through from almost the very beginning to the end of the Christian story. It's there. So what is this sacrifice? It seems like a very archaic idea that I can please God by burning something, killing something. Adam and Eve became aware of what? Good and evil. They became self-aware. Here's a crazy idea. Adam and Eve became aware of a future. Because when you're in the garden, before you have an awareness of good and evil, before death, there is no future. There's just the next thing, always. There's forever and ever. oh my gosh, I'm going to die, and from the point where I am right now to when I die, that is the future. And that exists out there. That's a new idea that Adam and Eve discovered, and an unpleasant one, I would suggest. And then, I got to work for a living, and it's hard, and women shall have pain in childbirth, and I've got to, till by the sweat of my brow, and so on. The future is out there, and it's not easy. It's scary, it's unknown, and so on. And the idea of the future that Cain and Abel have, along with self-awareness, self-consciousness, and all the rest develops this crazy idea that you can have agency, you can bargain with, you can potentially change the future. What is that? Sacrifice. How does that function? Well, I'll say, if any of you ate several donuts this morning, you are sacrificing a really tasty treat this morning for probably a pound later that will be on your hips or wherever it might be. Or if you said, oh, I can't eat that because I don't want my sugar level to spike and I don't want to gain weight, I've sacrificed feeling good right now for health in the future. Or I, have a certain amount of money I make. I'm going to save some, sacrifice whatever I could buy right now so I could have a retirement in the future. Or, how about this? Rather than spend everything I have at the moment, I'm going to work hard and save so my kids can have a better life than I do. All those are forms of sacrifice. And that is the basic idea. If I don't do something now, or I do something now, the future outcome is likely to be better than it was without doing that. All those different things. And this idea of sacrifice is there from almost the very beginning. And so what they're doing seems archaic, but it's actually a very human, divine type of relationship. And it also implies there is a relationship between people and God. I'm in a relationship with you, and it's kind of weird how we think of it, but I would, if we're in friends, we'd call each other. By the way, we have a visiting bishop today. Welcome, Chilton. That we would write a note. We would say thank you. We would say happy birthday. There are certain things you do to stay in relationship, and part of that people and God do is sacrifice. So all these things are operating right there with this very notion. And you expect, how hurtful can it be if what you offer as your very best sacrifice is not accepted? So Cain is crestfallen, I believe that was a word used, angry, resentful, and his countenance fell. And that's, sometimes you hear, tell me you're this without telling me you're that. His head is down. He's depressed. Shoot, what do I do? Now, I would suggest, too, that everybody, no matter your circumstances, always has a choice about how you act, how you think. That is always your choice, how you might respond or not. And Cain's choice was to be angry. Very angry is the adjective. Very angry. Yes, he was. But that doesn't mean you have to act on the anger. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Presumably he knew. And why is your countenance fallen? And here to me is the key, not just to me, but to many commentators, the key to the whole thing. God says to Cain, after he didn't accept his sacrifice, he's mad. God knows he's angry. Doesn't matter. If you do well, will you not be accepted? That is, if you do well, you will be accepted. If you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. I know you're angry, but the actions you take right now will determine your future. And every action, every decision you make also affects your future, just like this notion of sacrifice does. It shapes who you are and who you become. So just because you're angry, don't act out on that anger. You can still choose good. How in the world do Cain and Abel know good and evil, because there's no law yet, right? There's no code.
Right?
Mom and Dad, exactly, thank you. Well, you're guardian of the faith right there, Bishop. Mom and Dad taught them. It's reasonable to assume if they're brought up, stop hitting your brother. I mean, surely they said that, or 100,000 times. Or if Cain and Abel are living in the world, how many times, and I will say, I never did this, did you go poke an animal with a stick just to see how it would respond? Or if one is a shepherd and sacrifices the animal, the sheep presumably, he killed it. They've had to kill things before, so the idea of killing something is not new to them. They know what happens if you smash it with a rock or you shoot it or stab it, that thing ceases to live, whatever that means. So they do have an awareness of this good and evil, and it's always their choice. If you do well, that is, if you choose good, you will be accepted. By whom? By what? By God. So there's not a huge ethic that exists, laws and commandments at this point. Choose good. Don't do evil. It's as simple as that. And if you do not do well, if you don't choose good, if you choose evil, it's more than just passive, and we'll see that in just a moment, passive letting it happen. It's more of you're actively inviting evil into your life. Because look how evil is personified. Sin, or evil, sin is lurking at the door. All the Halloween garbage out everywhere makes me... Lurking, we don't use the word lurk, but in only a couple contexts. That thing is lurking right behind you. It's ominous. It's there, and it's going to get you. Nobody lurks, who lurks is up to any good at all. Lurking is always negative. And it's almost like a wild animal. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. What is it in Hebrew?
Desire.
Talked about crouching.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, crouching.
It lurks and is crouching. This sin, this evil, is at the door like a wild animal. And if it's crouching, what is it ready to do to you? Pounce, spring into action to tear you apart. Cain, that's waiting at the door for you. And by your actions, you are actively inviting this. It doesn't have to be personified malevolent spirit. We're not talking about the devil necessarily at all. Your bad, your evil choices, doing the bad, is inviting this wild, ravenous animal into your life. And you don't want to do that because bad things will happen. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. That's what it means to become a human being. That was the East of Eden, John Steinbeck. It's your choice to master it, to do good, not do evil.
Yeah, jump in.
Jeffrey?
Just one more detail about East of Eden, too. It is the American version of this story because it goes into my favorite subject, which is debt. And that's what the whole story is about, people owing money, people not having enough money. And he Americanizes this myth for us so it becomes part of the
So, East of Eden is the Americanized version of this story in the imagination. If you haven't read it, I highly encourage it.
Let me add some context from a Jewish perspective. The first is, to my mind, this story is essentially about, and we'll take the story beginning with Adam and Eve, and now we're focusing on Cain and Abel, but essentially is a story about relationships. Who are we in relation to others, our family first and foremost, and a sense of responsibility, which is now Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel's reality because they're out of the garden. So what the kinds of questions that are posed, either rhetorically, directed at Cain in this case, but rhetorically, where is your brother? What have you done? Speak to these ideas about relationships. Who are we vis-a-vis other people? And a sense of responsibility, which is ultimately our own. The idea being that in every moment of our lives, in every experience that we have, we maintain or retain the ability to choose. Right? You may remember Viktor Frankl, writing after his experiences in the concentration camps, describes that the very last thing that can be taken from a person, or that which cannot ultimately be taken from a person, is what? Remember? What our response is to events. That was essentially what he was saying. And so whether or not we wanted to delve into the theology of what it was about Cain or Abel's sacrifice that was pleasing or was acceptable or received regard or didn't, we all know experiences where we've been deprived of something or denied something or sort of on the outside looking in or whatever it might be, whatever degree to which that is measured by fairness or measured by simple privilege or our lot in life, whatever it is, how we respond is ultimately that which can't be taken away from us. And it seems to me that that really is at the heart of this story. We can talk about Cain and Abel's relationship and where they learned what they learned or what they did in response, but ultimately this is a story that suggests that responsibility for our lives, how we lead them, how we interact with others, is our own. Another thought. When Jonathan was speaking about sacrifice, in our vernacular, take it out of the religious context per se, but when we think of sacrifice, we think of giving something up, doing without, right? You can pay the ultimate sacrifice. You throw yourself on the hand grenade to save your band of brothers. Whatever it might be, we think of sacrifice as something which we surrender or we do without for some greater good, perhaps, or simply because there's an opportunity cost. I'm going to sacrifice an evening out with my friends because I need to study for the test tomorrow. In Hebrew, the word for sacrifice is korban, and it comes from the root karov, which means to draw close, which suggests that a sacrifice, think of it in a dyad or in a family or within a larger polity or community, that which we, if you will, sacrifice, instead of understanding it as giving up, what have we thought about it as something that which we share, something which brings us in closer proximity to someone. So think of yourself in a dyad. We know that compromise is required in couples or in dyads or in partnered relationships, right? But what have we thought of our sacrifices therein as the way in which we strengthen the bonds that we share with each other, as opposed to doing without, which may breed its own sense of resentment, or when we actually exist in a place of selflessness or altruism, and we're in connection in that way, it's really a very beautiful thing. So that's the notion of, for Judaism, or in Hebrew, the understanding of sacrifice. I have a fundraiser friend who suggests that when he's out soliciting members of the community, he doesn't want someone to give so much. He tells them this. I don't want you to increase your gift from last year. I don't want you to increase it such that it hurts. I want you to give such that it feels good. It's a different understanding of how we share or how we enter into relationships with one another. The other piece I'll share with you, and then we'll open up for some conversation, is there's a series of what I could refer to as Jewish koans. Koans being sort of these Zen teachings in Judaism. It's in a collection of wisdom rabbinic literature called Pirkei Avot, which is the ethical teachings of the ancestors. And they have a series of questions: who is rich, who is wise, who is strong, those kinds of answers. In answer to the one who is strong, do you know the answer from Jewish tradition? The one who is strong is the one who's able to control his or her own passions, our own desires, our own emotions. It's not about physical strength or the ability to conquer someone else, but rather to be able to subdue or to conquer our own passions. We've all been angry. We've maybe all, at one time or another, hit send on an email too soon, right? Because emotion got the better of us. But we know that true strength is the ability to control our passions or to rein in our desires or to circumvent the opportunity for sin crouching at the door to come in. Those are the choices that we possess. Yes, please. Is that the difference between reacting and acting? We know that we all do better if we write the angry letter and then sleep on it before sending. right? Reacting or acting in a reactive mode typically doesn't end well, right? We have that from experience. So controlling ourselves is the order of the day ultimately, right? Having quoted Viktor Frankl, let me quote also from Holocaust literature and education, and that is that we not only have the opportunity to control ourselves in each situation. I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. I forget. It'll come back to me. I'll jump in.
Oh, we got through the first half. So, sin's lurking at your door. So does Cain take God's advice and do good? The very next thing, Cain said to his brother Abel, "Hey, what are you doing today? You want to hang out? You want to go out in the field? Yeah, let's go out there where nobody else is. My field, let's go hang out by that spot right over there." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Notice how lacking of detail that is. There's no, he hit him with a rock, he strangled him or whatever. Just says he did it. There's not even particular malice there, but from what we've read, probably all that anger, resentment, those other feelings, I can't stand him. Why would he kill him? What's his motivation? Jealousy. Some have suggested also that Abel represents the ideal that Cain wants to be and can't stand it and has to destroy that, which is a human thing. That's what I want to be, and he's God's favorite, and it's better just to destroy that. And he kills him for whatever reason. Scene ends. Then the Lord said to Cain, when it says Lord in all caps in the Hebrew Bible, what does that mean? The Psalms, for example.
So 9 times out of 10, the English translations for the names that's referencing God, when it's capital L-O-R-D, essentially, usually it's Jehovah, Yahweh.
So Yahweh, Jehovah. So it's translated as Lord in our Psalms, for example, in the prayer book. And the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" And Cain gets lippy. Lippy is the word that comes to mind with God. I don't know. It's not my fault. Am I my brother's keeper? Who should be Abel's keeper? God. You mean your son? That one? God? You didn't do your job? That's what Cain is effectively saying. Am I my brother's keeper? No, it's your job. You should be looking after him, God, not me. Which, no human has ever blamed somebody else when they did something terrible. That's what's happening there. I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, "What have you done?" Listen, how does this read in the bloods? It's plural.
Dameh. There are Hebrew words that are in their natural state, as it were, in the plural. And blood is one of the ways it's dam. We spoke of Adam, blood. Dam or damim, bloods, is used interchangeably. But here it's the blood plural.
So it's plural. Your brother's bloods are crying out from the ground, which is phenomenal because it's also, Cain is the tiller of the soil. You killed your brother and his blood, multiple blood, and it's been suggested this is generation upon generation. Because think of all the children that Abel will not have. You killed his family line. All the sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters and so on, all of them don't exist because of what you've done. Listen, your brother's bloods are crying out to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You'll be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. So you don't get to be a farmer anymore, like all that you ever knew, because of what now, God could have, I guess, just bam, struck him down. But effectively what happens is banishment. You don't get to be who you were anymore. Think of how that operates psychologically, emotionally, and so on. You're not Cain that everybody knew. You got to get out of here. You can't do the job that you had. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I'll be a fugitive and wander on the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me. So even though I just murdered my brother, and you know, have mercy, Lord, have mercy. I didn't do it. Oh, you're hurting me. It feels like even though he just did this horrible thing, now you should be nice to me because, I'm me. Then the Lord said to Cain, not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. What does sevenfold means, Aaron?
Into the future.
Into the future. A lot.
A lot.
How many times do you forgive until you can't count anymore? That's what sevenfold means. So if anything happens to you, whoever does it, look out. And the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who came upon him would kill him. What is that mark? Some have suggested a tattoo. It doesn't matter. We just know that Cain is not to be messed with, but he is ostracized, banished. And then the horrible line, then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord. So he's removed from direct relationship with God that he had known his whole life. He's killed his brother. How do mom and dad, Adam and Eve, react when you've killed your brother and been banished by God? Not well, I'm guessing. Do they still love him? Yes. That would be a very difficult place to be. So you're completely cut off, and he's sent out to the land of Nod, which is not a specific place. What does Nod mean? Wandering. Timbuktu. You are to be a wanderer in the land of wandering. You are nobody, nowhere. You don't have your old identity. You're cut off from your family, cut off from God. You're a wanderer in the land of wandering. That's where you are. And then the lovely line, east of Eden, outside the garden. Where are we, by the way? Far east of Eden. Maybe. I would say we're still in contact with God. And by the way, sometimes, we're this or that. We are both Cain and Abel simultaneously. Sometimes we're more this, sometimes we're more that. We always have the responsibility of how we choose, how we think, how we act, and so on. Do we all bear the mark of Cain? Sure. You want to add anything?
Yeah, please, Admiral.
Judy. Adam and Eve lost both of their sons. The story will continue. God basically, multiple times early on, God does a do-over. Like, well, that didn't work out. Well, wait, I thought Adam and Eve were the first people, then how do they later go on and have other kids and get married? In this context of the story, there are other people that exist out there. Cain's son founds the first city. Was it Enoch?
Yes.
Enoch founds the first city. So there are other people out there. He goes off, starts a new life, but Adam and Eve have lost their sons, and they start over. Seth is the next one. It ends up with Noah, and that's not great either, what happened there. Tom and then Daniel.
Just kind of, in relation to this, I was reading last night that Christian defenders of slavery used to claim that the mark of Cain was black skin.
So Christian, Civil War era and before, Christian defenders of slavery used to claim that the mark of Cain was black skin. That is, I would say reading into the text to make it say whatever you want. Yeah, good point. Daniel?
I really liked what you said about agency at the beginning. We've talked a couple times about how this is like getting older, growing up. And to some extent, I think we're in a similar sort of situation here. God keeps introducing them to the fact that their choices have consequences. And that when they choose something, something else will happen. And when I first encountered these stories, I often thought, well, this is just straight out punishment. You did this, I don't like it, so bad stuff's going to happen. But reading it more, I think this is, because you've chosen this, you know, as you would think when you're dealing with children, this is kind of going to happen to you. As a result of what you've chosen, this will follow. And so this has happened several times where they make a choice. Guess what? Now you're going to be out of Eden. Now you've made another choice. Now you're going to be a wanderer. And so this is because your choices do have consequences, like you say. And I think that we still tend to be kind of conflicted about this, just like they were, in that we do want our choices to matter, right? Like, you know, I want to be able to change stuff. I want to be powerful. I want to be able to make a difference. But on the other hand, when we make bad choices, we think, oh, gosh, I smoked for 9 years. I really hope I don't get lung cancer. That shouldn't, you know, we make, that's me. We make choices and then we think, I don't want the consequences of them. I wish my choices hadn't mattered. And so I think that we're still sort of in a state of having to realize that our choices really matter.
Yeah, very good.
If I can, I think that's 100% right, that early in these Genesis stories, we're introduced to the idea that you have choices. Some choices are better than other choices, and all choices have consequence. That's an important, we learn that as babies, right? You knock that bowl of Cheerios off the high chair and someone picks it up for you, and that becomes a game because there's cause and effect. We all have choices. Some choices are better than other choices, and all choices have consequence, right? That's the first. I want to also suggest that the mark of Cain, which I've always imagined that idiom is not unlike a scarlet letter, that for what you did, everyone will now know. And that's how you move in the world. And in point of fact, we've now reached a point, just in terms of technology, you can do something online, or that's captured online, and you can now live with it for the rest of your natural life, right? Sort of a scary idea. But what if we understood the mark of Cain to be something not that's visible to others, but it's not unlike, if you will, eating from the tree of knowledge, of good and evil? That the mark of Cain is now the awareness that while we imagine, or we like to say that the other people, whoever they are the violent ones, or the other people are the ones, unlike me, make choices that really are hurtful to other people, perhaps the mark of Cain is to now understand that we each possess the ability to do wonderful things and also terribly hurtful and destructive things. And as we move out of the garden, Adam and Eve received one punishment. The mark of Cain, which is upon all of us, is the awareness that we too are capable of. We know we're capable of sin. We know we're capable of prejudice. We have them. We know we can do things that are hurtful to other people. And sometimes we desire to do such things. That's part of what it means now to live east of Eden. That's part of what it means now to live in the real world.
It's still the choice to do good.
What's that?
But you still have the choice to do good.
Still the choice to do good.
Thank you all very much.
Yep.